Hi, this is Natalie, flyGIRL Kelley, and I am here at Sporty's in Batavia, Ohio. And I just wanted to show what I do when I get ready to go on a flight, the pre-flight for my plane, which is a Piper Archer. So I'm just going to walk around the plane and show you all the steps that we take when we get ready to take a flight. So we usually keep everything that we need for the pre-flight somewhere near the airplane or in the airplane. What I typically use is a sump, and this is to sump the fuel, so you can test the fuel to make sure there's no contaminants in the fuel or no water in the fuel. You want to test it, and then I'll check my oil as well. So we're going to walk around the wing. This plane holds 50 gallons, 48 are usable, and the tanks are actually in the wings, and this is a low wing airplane. So I'm just going to check when I ask them to fill the plane up. You always want to visually check to make sure it was actually filled up. And you can just look in there and see the fuel, and it is full. And then you want to sump the fuel. And there's a little sump underneath here where the fuel comes out. And this 100 low lead fuel is always a light blue. You want to look at it, make sure there's no contaminants floating around or any water. And then you can just pour it back into the tank so it doesn't go, so it's not wasted. This plane actually has 3 sumps, so we're going to walk around and sump each one. This plane typically gets about 9.5 to 10.5 gallons per hour of fuel burned. Now we're going to check the oil. You always want to check the oil. The last thing you want to happen is to be out of oil when you're up in the sky and your engine completely shuts down. There's nothing you can do about it when you're in the sky, so you want to check it before you take off. And this holds 6 to 8, and I have the oil changed every 40 to 50 flight hours. Depending on what season it is, you may need to use a different grade of oil for really cold weather if you live in a cold weather climate. Also, when I'm walking around, I'm going to check the tires and make sure they have air in them. Just visually check. Look at the wing, make sure it doesn't have any damage to it. You're going to check the propeller by feeling it and make sure there's no major nicks. You're going to look in these little vent holes, I guess you'd call them, make sure there's no like bird's nests or anything that's gotten trapped in there. You're going to check this. I usually make sure there's about 4. This is like the shock of the landing gear. I usually check in here. This is the air intake. And then I'm going to visually check. This is a cool air intake, fresh air intake here. And over here you also have your pitot static mast right here, and this is how you get your airspeed. And then there's 2 static holes as well that you want to make sure are clear and there's nothing stuck in there. Let's kind of visually check this wing as well. Make sure there's no dents on the flaps and the ailerons. This is the ailerons, the flaps. Make sure it has the pins and all the screws in there as you look at them. We're actually going to lower these, but we're going to walk around here first. This is a static vent as well, and it has a little hole. You want to make sure it's free. These static holes are used for the autopilot system only. Then I'm going to check the stabilator, make sure it moves very gently. I'm not going to push this very hard, but I just want to make sure it's straight, and I'm going to take a visual check underneath the plane, make sure there's nothing, the wings are straight and level, no damage on the top. Okay, so these are the flaps. This is what slows your airspeed down when you're getting ready to land. I'm just going to make sure this is attached and not bent or anything. Look at all the brackets. Make sure there's pins in the ailerons here. The ailerons are what control when you're turning. Check the lights, make sure they're working. Landing lights. And I'm going to check the stall warning horn, which is electric, so make sure it makes a noise. That is what will let you know if you're going to have an aerodynamic stall. If you hear that, you need to point your nose down because you don't want to stall. It's not an engine stall, but it's an aerodynamic stall. So on the airplanes, the green light is always on the pilot's right side, and the red light is on the left. So when you're flying at night, you'll know what direction the plane is moving. You'll know if you see the green light that he's traveling from your left to your right. With the propeller, you never want to turn the propeller. I'm very nervous about turning the propeller because, well, the magnetos should be off, but if for some reason you forgot to shut the magnetos off and you start moving the propeller, it can actually start, and there's been a lot of serious injuries when they were live and people didn't know they were live. So I'm always really leery to move the propeller. I know you can somewhat, but I pretty much don't, and I don't recommend. Over here we've got some air induction. This top air induction is going to be used to cool off your alternator, bringing the cool air in. The bottom is for heating the cabin. It goes through like an engine shroud and pulls heat from that to when you turn your heat on the inside. And this air induction intake filters the air before it enters the carburetor. This is a carbureted engine in this plane. Fresh air intake is over here for the cabin for ventilation, because it does have air vents. So when you turn on the vents, this is where the air is coming from. And that's pretty much the pre-flight. And then we can get ready, we'll get in the plane, and there's a whole set of things that we're gonna do in there with a checklist. You always use a checklist for just about every part of your flight, your pre-flight, before you start up the engine, when you're taxiing, before you take off, when you're cruising, when you're climbing, when you're getting ready to land. There's a checklist that just helps you stay on top of what needs to be done and you don't forget anything. That's it.